Hi, I'm Donna Ray.
And I'm Al Wadley.
Welcome to our podcast, Feldenkrais for Life.
In each episode, we will discuss ideas and experiences pertaining to the Feldenkrais Method.
You're going to learn skills that will move pain to comfort, anxiety to ease, and we'll explore learning and how to spark creativity.
To learn more about Donna, visit her site at donnaray.com.
To find Al Wadley, go to achievingexcellence.com. Hi, Al.
Hey, Donna.
Hey, I'm excited about this topic. It's a difficult topic for so many people, talking about pain, the experience of pain and physical pain, but also emotional pain.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. This is a topic that a lot of our students, a lot of our clients deal with. I mean, that's the primary reason people come to the Feldenkrais Method is because they have some kind of pain that has not resolved and they need help resolving it.
They do need help resolving it. And our excitement comes from being able to help people. That's where the excitement comes from. I mean, it's a tough thing. We've all been in pain. I've had injuries and pain myself over the years, and I've overcome difficulties. But seeing people get better, improve their lives, their functioning, their choices, and to actually see people enjoying themselves again after they've gone through pain of some sort, or learning how to redirect their attention so that their focus is actually on feeling well, feeling pleasure, comfortable, and seeing the beauty of daily life again.
Yeah.
That's what excites me.
Yeah, no, that's huge. It's interesting that I came to the Feldenkrais Method because I had a lot of pain. And so many people do. And actually, as the story goes, Feldenkrais developed the awareness of the movement and the functional integration because of a knee injury that he had to get over. So in a way, the work was birthed out of Dr. Feldenkrais's desire to resolve his painful knee and get back to doing what he loved to do. And of course, he had a whole unique history that went into that development of the method. But still, that's the way we usually come to the work. And it's, as you say, it's a beautiful thing to be able to move out of that and start to move into life. And that was the birth of the Feldenkrais Method. It's moving out of pain and moving really into a really rich, meaningful sense of self through the work of the Feldenkrais Method.
When we experience pain, there's a huge variety. There's a huge variety of sensations, difficulty, and challenges that go with experiencing pain. And sometimes we have pain that's so excruciating at the time of an accident, for example. I think I mentioned before that I broke my wrist severely several months ago, falling on a pickleball court, and the pain was excruciating. I was nauseated. I was completely debilitated. I could hardly walk. And it was terrible. And I was taken to the emergency room. And there was a period of time where I was sitting alone because of the pandemic in a wheelchair in a corner of the waiting room, really hurting. And so I used my Feldenkrais skills. I regulated my breathing. I scanned my whole self from my feet to my head. I talked to myself in a way that was soothing. I created a sense of timelessness, trusting that I would be taken care of as soon as possible. And I don't remember actually how long I waited or what took place and on the timeline because I was working with this altered state. The pain was still there, but I was not afraid of it. I was really working with myself not to be afraid and to trust people that I was going to be taken care of. And I believe that helped me tremendously because when I think about the experience, I actually have some good feelings related to it. And that's kind of strange. People often don't amplify good feelings during a time of a large reaction to an injury or to a problem.
I think that strategy you employed so early on in the injury really helped you to manage the acute pain. And acute pain is the pain that happens, in the moment when you have an injury. It's your brain and your nervous system letting you know, hey, there's a problem here. You need to pay attention to it. And most likely prevented you from going into some kind of chronic pain syndrome because you were able to not let yourself go there by orienting towards pleasant feelings, by going into this altered state and making yourself comfortable and not being afraid of the pain. You're able to kind of lower the threshold of the acute pain and not let yourself get into a chronic pain situation.
Yes, and it allowed me to cooperate with the people that were helping me. So I was so grateful to be helped. And when my hand was reset by the ER doc, he said, "Thank you." And I said, "For what?" And he said, "For cooperating." And I said, "Well, I want to help you. I want to be as available as I can for the help that I need." And he said, "You're doing a really good job." And I reflected, there are probably a lot of people that don't know how to do that, and they fight and they struggle rather than allowing themselves to be cared for. And all of this brings us to examine injuries and pain and acute pain, like you said, chronic pain, and self-regulating. And that is one of the things that we're so good at in the Feldenkrais method.
Let's talk about what is chronic pain. How does that develop? You were able to stave that off and just heal nicely with the wrist. But some people get into a situation where they develop a chronic pain issue. It's like the brain and the nervous system get caught in a loop and creates a feed-forward system where the parts of the brain that experience pain become hyperactive. And the brain and the nervous system, being anticipatory in nature, start to anticipate pain and expect it. And so this kind of builds this whole system of experiencing pain in a chronic way. So chronic meaning, going through time, over a period of time, and actually, in many cases, building. There's strategies, there's ways, and the Feldenkrais method provides those ways to depotentiate those chronic pain loops and start to move us into ways of being comfortable, feeling safe, and having pain that we can manage, or just eliminating it altogether.
Yes, and I think that managing pain, especially after an injury, is essential to the prevention of chronic pain. So, I wouldn't even begin to say that I was able to ward off pain, with the kind of injury that I had. But, there were a few days in between the injury, the ER visit, and then when I had surgery, something like 5 days later. And so then after the surgery, you go through another recovery period. That's actually really intense and painful. And of course, I took opioids during that time. And they helped a lot. They helped me sleep through the night. And when they're used carefully and judiciously, they help prevent the pain pattern from getting set up so that you can sleep and rest. Now, I know that's really difficult for many people because they like the feeling of relief. And sometimes there's even a sense of euphoria when people take pain medication. Fortunately, it helped my pain, and I didn't particularly enjoy the sedation and the way that they made me feel overall. So it was relatively easy to wean myself after taking them for a few weeks. But one of the things that I did in addition to using pain medication is that I kept looking for what I could do that felt good. And there was a period of time where I would imagine opening and closing my hand and make very, very small movements with my fingers. And so I was finding movement that was available and comfortable, small movements, imagined movements. And I also did those same movements with my left hand that was fine and uninjured, so that I would continue to program my brain for functional use of my hands with a sense of comfort and ease.
Yeah, and that's a really, really great example of using a Feldenkrais approach to start to reprogram your brain to kind of depotentiate the intensity of the pain and to start to cultivate the sensations of pleasant movement, of pleasant sensation. And really, the brain and the nervous system prefer that. And with a little bit of intervention and a little bit of redirection, then we can start to change our orientation away from pain into something that's more comfortable. The potential bind that can come up is that pain is like a red light. It's like an alert system. And it's really challenging to move your attention away from it. And fortunately, in Feldenkrais lessons, you're working with a practitioner or you're working with lessons on your own, that it's kind of woven in, it's built into the lesson to start to learn to move your attention away from what is painful, what is not comfortable, and move it towards what is and what feels good. And the more you do that, the more you build that reference of good feeling and good sensation. Your brain and your nervous system prefer that, really. You don't want to be in pain. Mm-hmm. And so the more you can build those pleasant sensations, the more you start to develop them.
So true. And, one of the aspects of pain that we're familiar with is that we remember pain. And when you remember pain, you bring pain back. So that can become a habit, a thought habit, actually. So I don't know if you've had this experience, but many years ago, I was in quite a severe automobile accident, and my neck was injured, and I had really, I would say, chronic pain in my neck. And when I would tell people about the accident, it would hurt so much more. And I had to stop doing that. And I eventually decoupled the story from the pain. And I was able to overcome the pain by using the Feldenkrais method, both getting hands-on work, the functional integration work, and doing awareness through movement. And it actually took me quite a long time, I would say a couple of years, to be completely pain-free. But it was so interesting to me that even after quite a bit of time had passed, when I would remember the accident and the pain, it would just flood me.
I was giving a lesson to one of my clients yesterday, and she was talking about the new sensations that she's starting to develop. She's had a lot of injuries, a lot of accidents, and broke her pelvis in numerous places in her knee and all kinds of things. So I started working with her. She had a lot of chronic pain. We were talking yesterday. She was talking about all these new sensations that she's becoming aware of, actually feeling herself and feeling herself accurately. And yet just the feeling of these connections, the skeletal and muscular connections, were very pleasant to her. And she said to me, I can't even remember what it felt like. I don't remember what it felt like when I first came to see you. And I thought, well, that is perfect. It's like, what a wonderful thing to forget. Forget about how bad you felt. Just know now the good sensations that you have of yourself. And that is a beautiful thing. And that's one of the things that can come out of this work. There's kind of a catchphrase in neuroplasticity where things are fired together, they wire together, right? You've heard this.
Yeah.
And so it's like in pain syndrome and chronic pain, that's what happens. It's like the pain gets wired and connected to all these other things. And so if we start to separate that out in what neuroplasticians call competitive neuroplasticity, which is building a representation which is so pleasant, so compelling, you start to decouple all these other things from the pain. The pain begins to diminish. And then you've got this really much more pleasant way of experiencing the world. And that's, I guess you might say, a neuroplastic look at what happens in a Feldenkrais lesson.
There's some science behind what we're talking about. Another fact about pain is that it is very useful in the beginning because it slows us down. It makes us careful, cautious. We don't want to re-injure an injury. So it's very helpful to have some pain. But over time, the healing does occur. And for some people, the pain doesn't go away, but it's no longer useful because the place where the pain was located is healed. And the pain then, we know, becomes a memory. It's like the flashback that I was talking about. It's like you reinvent it. So your brain is reinventing the pain. And it's not to be said that people want this or are making it happen for themselves. I don't believe in this secondary gain idea where you're making yourself, suffer. So understanding the science helps us remember that the severity of the pain after healing does not equal the actual mechanical injury. Does that make sense, Al?
Totally. I think what you're talking about is, that acute pain that occurs right after an injury, and then the injury heals, and then the pain continues on. It's like there was a habit developed of sensing and feeling pain in that area. And it's just the brain going on automatic. It just formed a habit. So we need to break up that habit and direct attention and direct awareness, direct the brain to have more comfortable sensations.
And so the other part of that's so important for people to know is that if they have severe pain, say months after the healing has occurred, it's not an indication of threat, although it feels really threatening to sense that kind of pain. But once you actually have a doctor's clearance, it's verified that you've healed, your bones have mended, the swelling can even be gone. There's no more inflammation. It's like everything looks just fine, but the pain is severe. When we know that, it's almost like we're being tricked by the brain to think that we have to continue to be cautious. And that is not the case. Although if you push hard and you challenge the pain often will get worse. So that's how we come into play in the Feldenkrais method, because we're doing what you're talking about earlier. We want to decouple the experience from the injured zone in movement from an indirect way with refocus of attention on what feels pleasurable, what feels good, what's easy, spreading out sensation, using breath. We actually know from our experience with so many people and ourselves that we can break up pain patterns.
Yeah. There's a couple of things come to mind when you're talking about that, about having a habit of feeling pain. I've worked with a lot of people that have pain. You probably have experienced this as well, where, move somebody's arm or lift their shoulder and they wince or they hold their breath. And I ask them, I say, so did that hurt? I go, no. So why did you wince? Why did you hold your breath? What was going on there? I say, well, I was expecting it to. So there becomes this whole anticipation of pain. So the brain and the nervous system are anticipatory in nature. And so people just come to expect it to hurt. And that actually is a part of the feed-forward system, is expecting the pain. And so I come back to that. So I'm going to lift your shoulder again. And I'm going to really slowly. So just exhale as I lift. And recognize now there's no pain. And you don't need to expect it. So they have to have the experience of the shoulder being moved and not having the pain reaction and not anticipating it. So that's one of the ways, like in a private lesson, that we can start to decouple the pain and the pain habit. And so we're starting to create the sense of comfort and ease.
Yeah, with that kind of support and directing attention so gently as you're describing the process, people learn to trust themselves in movement again, and they move out of the fear response. And we've found that anticipation of fear increases muscle tension. So people hold themselves tightly because they're afraid it's going to hurt, and they don't even know they're doing it anymore. And the muscle tension can actually create the pain because those muscles get tired. They're tight and they're tired. We're not supposed to be lifting our shoulders up to our ears, for example. That's not what's meant to be happening. And we can cause a lot of pain in our neck and our shoulders and even in the shoulder joints by unknowingly lifting the shoulders and holding them up. And when we learn through awareness to stop doing that, the pain and not only in the neck and the shoulders, often in the mouth and the jaw, it goes away because the whole muscular reaction, that's the anticipation of discomfort, is creating the discomfort.
Yeah. And that's totally spot on. And a couple of other things that can play into that is the breath, and then like anticipating pain or something's going to be difficult, that we often hold the breath, which actually creates the potential for more stress, making it harder, making it more difficult. And then also people will, if they have a feeling of tension or pain or something, let's say, in the upper back, they'll often do things to try and create a different kind of sensation. So they'll tense themselves in another way to try and combat that, and end up layering on more effort, more work, more tension over something to try and neutralize it. Whereas really what we need to do is become aware, like you were saying, aware of the patterns, aware of our habits of holding the whole constellation of what goes into creating these unpleasant sensations, and start to let them go. Start to find and redirect into ways that are feeling more comfortable. And so that's really the key thing there. And so we do that in our private lessons, in that little example that I gave. We do that in the group lessons or the guided awareness through movement lessons as well. That's an opportunity for you to really start to learn to sense yourself accurately. What are the habits and patterns you have for holding that create tension and pain? And then start to let them go. Start to inhibit those and move in the direction of something that's more pleasant.
Yeah, along with what you're describing, that's so often named pain, we have an emotional response to all of this. So we're afraid of the pain. We try to control the pain. We become tight. We can become rigid. We can make decisions that exclude all kinds of behaviors and activities that used to be enjoyable and fun. And depression often accompanies this whole process. Right after my surgery, my surgeon, who's a lovely woman, very compassionate, said, "Don't be surprised if you feel depressed for a while." And I said, "Well, I'm a professional. I can probably deal with that." And she said, "Sometimes you guys are the most difficult people because you think you can. So just keep in mind that if you start feeling kind of blue, that this is normal." I did, because I couldn't use my right hand for several weeks, which meant just think about having your right hand stuck in your pocket for several weeks and having to cope with your left hand only. There's so many things that you cannot do. And fortunately, my husband was able to do my cooking. Just imagine there's so much you can't do when you can't use your dominant hand. And that leads to a feeling of tremendous frustration and depression. And then the mind gets going. It's like, am I ever going to be able to do things that I want to do again? And there was a period of time where I was actually afraid to take the dog for a walk because I was afraid I'd fall on my hand again. So I'd walk by myself. So I didn't want to have anything extra to deal with. And then there was a day where I went, I can take the dog. It's going to be fine. And I went back to, natural walking. And then I have a hillside in my backyard. And it took me months to feel confident to climb that hill again because I was afraid I'd fall down. It can be slippery. But recently I just ran on up that hillside. I had to do something at the top because we had big winds. I had to put a bench back in place and kind of clean up a little spot at the top of the hill. And afterwards, I went, wow, that was easy. I didn't even flinch. I just did it. And when we find ourselves doing things like that, we know that we've recovered.
I'm curious, Donna. So when you were kind of in the throes of that early frustration and feeling kind of blue around that, what were some of the strategies that you used to pull yourself out of that or to redirect yourself into, I guess maybe hope, expectation of wellness and healing, that kind of thing?
Well, because I'm so familiar with the Feldenkrais method, I used awareness through movement every day, on and off, sometimes doing, say, a 45-minute long lesson, lying on the floor or just resting on the couch or in bed. Like I said, open and close my hands, one, the other. I moved my hand in front of my face and followed it with my eyes, both the left one and the right one. So I invented lessons, I did movement. And as I was healing, I increased the size of the movements, and I found that fascinating. So I started very small, very delicate. And then I began I would even say I was into it a couple of months in my recovery, doing rolling to sit lessons and movements that required me to roll through my hand as if to push up with my hand, but I wouldn't push hard. I would just lightly touch the floor with my right hand. And afterwards, I would feel normal again, like my hand had become a part of me again. So I realized it was so significant to do bigger movements with the whole body, the whole self, so that I would forget that I had an injury. It was like light bulbs were going off in my nervous system. I felt so much joy, and my confidence started to return. And then the other thing that I did, I love doing functional integration, putting my hands on other people. So I touched my own face and felt the sensitivity of my hands. And that was incredibly reassuring because I didn't lose any sensitivity, and then I would put my hands on my partner, on my husband, and move him ever so gently and lightly and equalize my hands so that my right hand felt as strong as my left hand. So I just developed lots of games, different kinds of approaches to the functional use of my right hand and arm.
Yeah. So I want to amplify a couple of things that you said in there. So one is you were not trying to fix the pain. You were not trying to resolve the pain. You were making other kinds of sensory distinctions, other kinds of experiences for yourself that didn't have anything to do with the pain. So your description of touching your husband and equalizing the pressure, that, stimulates the nervous system. It creates more balance in the nervous system. It has nothing to do with pain. It has to do with sensing and comfort. And the other thing is you're talking about doing these awareness and movement lessons, their whole body, right? Whole self involved in it. So your overall functioning is improving. So it's kind of like, rising tide lifts all boats, right? So when your overall functioning improves, your overall wellness improves, and the injured area also improves. So you're starting to bring that along, but not by focusing on it, not trying to solve it as a problem or make it stop hurting, but by improving your overall functioning of yourself. Therefore, the pain just reduced on its own, and the functioning of your hand and your wrist improved on their own. So I think those are two really key ideas you just described there. They're really essential to how important and how influential this work can be. Improving abilities and getting people out of unpleasant situations.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you took the time to amplify that and to further explain what I was talking about. We sometimes take these things for granted, but they're not ideas or approaches that people know how to do. So I really hope that people will call us and ask for encouragement, ways to go about functionally increasing their activities so they can see that pain reduces with that kind of change in themselves. You're changing the brain through movement. You're changing your nervous system. And we also know that by finding the pleasure through movement and directing attention, that we increase the dopamine response in the brain. And we want to increase that feeling of pleasure so that you can take advantage of what your brain/nervous system can do for you in your recovery. And even afterwards, when you're not feeling any pain at all and you've integrated your movement and you're feeling fine, focusing on beauty and ease and comfort and pleasure creates a lot more enjoyment every day.
Yeah, that's for sure. I had an experience in New Mexico. I was remodeling this house, and I developed a really severe pain in my knee, my right knee. It wasn't like any specific accident or injury that I was aware of. It just started to hurt it really hurt. And so I had to slow down. I couldn't stop doing the job I was doing. I needed to get it done. I had a time frame. So I had to really slow down and be mindful about everything that I did so that I could use my leg in a way that was comfortable, that allowed me to complete the tasks that I needed to do without aggravating it and creating more discomfort. So that was a real challenge, but I was able to do that. And of course, I did my Feldenkrais lessons all the way through that process and have continued to do them since. I admit it took quite a while. I mean, it took me a year to get out of that situation with that painful knee. But now I can do anything I want to do with it. It doesn't hurt. I can sit in a full lotus again, no issue. And I can do the things I want to do. Sometimes we are in a situation like that where we've got pain and we have to find a way to work with it, negotiate with it without aggravating it. That's the example that I'm trying to give there.
So you're describing mindful movement in action, being very mindful about how you were moving, how you were organizing yourself so that you could keep going. And so often we have to do that. We have to find a way to keep doing what we have to do. There's a recovery period, and then we have to do what we need to do. And if we slow down, pay attention, mindfully move, it's possible to continue the healing process and be in activity. Now, there's a term that I heard, and I was listening to a podcast, and it was savoring what feels good. And I love that. And that's part of what you're describing, I think. And I'd like to refer to Eric Garland, who's a PhD, and he's done a lot of research on pain recovery and decreasing the use of opioids related to pain, chronic pain, acute pain. And he's talking about mindfulness and the importance of mindfulness along with psychotherapy. And unfortunately, I don't think he knows about the Feldenkrais method. But if we could add the Feldenkrais method to what he's doing, I imagine that his results would soar. He's already getting really good results with his program. But when you learn how to savor pleasurable movement and find ease and organize yourself, I know from personal experience and all the years of practicing the Feldenkrais method with people that we really assist them in this process of awareness and moving into comfort.
Yeah, that's what we do.
There's so much more to say. But maybe we should bring this to a close now, and we could always add in another podcast more information about the Feldenkrais method. What do you think, Al?
I think we definitely can do that. This is a great subject on which to speak because it is so pervasive, and it's something that if you're alive, you're going to deal with it at some point in time because stuff happens in life, and you need to really understand that you have the ability to recover from pain, recover from your injuries, and do the things you want to do in life and do them easily and do them comfortably. It's really essential.
It's so essential. We'd love to hear your comments, your questions. Just send us an email or leave a voice message, and we'll get back to you.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye. If you'd like to follow up with a question, send an email to info@feldenkreisforlife.com. We would love to hear from you.
You can learn more about us on our websites.
You can find Al at achievingexcellence.com.
You can visit my site to join my classes and reach out to me for private lessons online or in my Longmont studio. You'll find my store, the Feldenkrais store, there as well, where you can purchase books, audio products, and videos. Donna's website is donnaray.com.
And if you visit my website, you'll find that I'm offering individual sessions, group classes in the Feldenkrais Method, mentoring groups, professional Feldenkrais training program information, and recorded lessons.
Thank you again so much for joining us. I look forward to you hearing us next week.
Bye now.
Bye.